Hello, students. I hope you're enjoying my new video virtual background. This one was actually taken, I think, from The Wizard of Oz, about 4 seconds of video in a loop, but it does give quite the effect. Anyway, enough of that and on to our lesson of the week, which is customer care. How to cherish those who are the reason our businesses exist and the driving force behind their success. Now, we all of us have customers. I'm a supplier of business education services, and you are my customers. And also your parents, I consider my customers. What I want to do for you today is to share my passion for customer service and a few lessons I've learned along the way, because I think it might help you in your life and it might bring some of the examinable content to life for you. My customers' time is very valuable, and I appreciate that you've chosen to spend it with me, and I promise you I will keep this lesson under 1 hour. Thank you for choosing to learn. In your business of the future, which I consider to be your education, who is your customer? Who is the customer for your education? It's not me. It's not the St. Leonard's Academy. It's not your parents. As we go through the lesson, I want you to think about it, and we'll revisit that question at the end. Let's talk a little bit first about perception versus reality. A lot of the time, businesses try to impose their perception on their customers, and that always causes problems. You see, a customer has a particular perception of a business, and it's real. And there's no point in arguing about it. The best thing you can do is to say, this is my customer's perception, that's their reality, and their reality is my reality. How can I fix it if it needs to be fixed? I'll give you an example. I pride myself in trying to hit a certain service level. That's what I've always done my entire professional career. Is I've given myself a target, something that I expect to be able to do for my customers in terms of how responsive I am. And my target for myself is to get back with you on any questions you may have within 1 school day. And so I sent a survey out, a quantitative survey, the first round, and you can see the results here. And most of you think I hit that target. But a significant portion, over 25%, think that I take longer than I intended to. Now, I've got 2 choices. I can push back and say, oh, no, you're wrong, and I can prove it. Well, that sounds very defensive. I don't think you'd be very appreciative of that as a customer, and it does nothing to change your perception. In fact, it probably cements your perception because it suggests that maybe I've got something to hide. So instead of that, the way I approach this is I need more tools to help convince you that I am being more responsive. So one of the tools that you'd suggested to me that you'd like to see us implement is a live chat option that might allow me to respond to very quick, very brief questions very, very quickly. And so that's what I did. I spent my time investigating whether we could get a live chat option in place. We found out that we could get one in place and that it should be in place by the end of October of next year. It's coming along with a platform called Microsoft Teams. So that to me is the healthiest way to approach a customer's perception. You just have to accept it for what it is and say, what can I do from this point to help give a more favorable perception of my business? The second concept I want to introduce to you is the concept of pleasing someone versus serving someone. Because the kind of customer care that I'm talking about is all about serving them, not necessarily pleasing them. Now, sometimes serving them and pleasing them is the same thing, and that's wonderful. But pleasing caters to what customers want, whereas serving caters to what customers need. Sadly, they're often two very, very different things. And I can't think of any other topic on which they're probably more different than when it comes to this. That is a picture of my first pack of cigarettes. When I bought my first pack, they cost 85 US cents. That's about 60 pence. I had smoked for about 10 years prior in bars and pubs at night, and I had never before bought a pack of cigarettes until I was 29. And I bought those, and very, very quickly, I was buying certainly more than one pack a day. And whenever anyone asked me how much I smoked, I lied. I said 10 a day. That was my stock answer. Remember when we talked about market research, we said there are certain questions that it's not worth asking because customers will lie about them. And this is one of them. Ask someone how much they smoke. They will always, in my opinion, tell you less than they actually do. What I needed was freedom from these, believe me. What I wanted was the next pack. And so you can see how different needs and wants can be in a customer. And if we are truly caring of our customers, we're going to focus on what they need. And sometimes that gets very tricky indeed. In 2015, I finally told the truth. I said, I smoked 2 packs on a good day and 3+ on a bad day. I was finally at Boots Pharmacist in Prairie Meadow Mall. I was given a course of treatment that finally set me free again. Now, I mentioned to you last time that I also worked in this little market, which is opposite the Source Park. I was responsible to transition it from one owner to another. And in there, one of my best customers was in the exact same situation I'd been in. And when you've been in that situation, the only person you will talk to about it is someone who understands. Someone else who knew that they were lying about it all along, knew that they desperately wanted to quit, but just did not know how to begin to tell the truth and come to terms with what they needed to do to stop smoking. And she went to the exact same pharmacist, and she had quit for 2 weeks. But then she walked into my shop again, and she wanted desperately to buy a packet of cigarettes. She was having some real cravings, and she saw me behind the counter, and I think was almost relieved because she knew that I knew that she was struggling. And the previous owner was in there. He still owned the place. We were transitioning to a new owner. And what I did was I very politely refused to serve her the cigarettes. And the former owner became absolutely furious with me. And he said, "Why did you do that? You turned away perfectly good business. I had her brand of cigarettes. What were you thinking?" And my response was this: dead customers don't buy. Sometimes with our customers, we have to look beyond the immediate benefit to the business of the sale. There really isn't much benefit to selling tobacco for convenience shops, honestly. It's an extremely low margin business. And they would just as well not carry them, except that their customers who smoke demand and expect to get their cigarettes from that shop. But the point is, we've got to be able to look beyond what our customers want sometimes to what they need. And I just want to say something to you. If you are someone who has not yet tried smoking, I plead with you not to. With some of us, it takes as little as one drag of one cigarette, and we're addicted for life. And what I can promise you is this: all cigarettes do is make you think you need them. That's all they do, while they slowly rob you of life. If you've already started, and if you are feeling trapped, as I was for years, there is help available. And you need to let someone at the school know, and we will get you that help. No one will punish you for stepping forward and saying that you have an issue and you want to do something about it. We will be nothing but extremely proud. And when you're in a customer service position, remember that customers, just like us, don't always know what they need. They always know what they want, but they don't always know what they need. And superior customer service shows the tact and communication skills to suggest to them what they might need, not just what they might want. Let's look at how customers become fans of businesses and how customers become, frankly, the enemies of businesses. And the best way to describe this to you is through something called Net Promoter Score. And Net Promoter Score is widely accepted now throughout a number of industries as the definitive measurement of customer satisfaction. And it goes something like this. The question is usually on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most likely, how likely are you to recommend me, meaning the business, to a friend? A 9 or a 10 is considered a promoter. If you score that highly, you will recommend that business to anyone who asks, and many people who don't. If you give a 7 or 8, believe it or not, that sounds like it's pretty high, but that is considered these days neutral. You will neither help nor hurt the business, and in your view, that business met your expectations, but they didn't go above and beyond, and they didn't dissatisfy as well. If you rated them 1 to 6 on the answer to that question, you are a detractor. You are at various levels of dissatisfaction. If left unaddressed, you will continue to damage that business to a small all the way up to a large extent. And what the business needs to do is to seek and destroy that dissatisfaction. It is critically important that they do that. One detractor in the wrong place, particularly today with the power of social media, can be fatal to a business. Now, let me tell you about a very, very interesting situation. I'm going to introduce you to two businesses. You've certainly probably heard of them. They are BT and they are EE. Now, I am a huge promoter of one of these businesses, and I'm a huge detractor of the other. But something very interesting happened. One of them acquired the other. BT in 2016 acquired EE. Now, BT is from what I would refer to as a former monopoly. In other words, when I was your age, I think probably around then, if you wanted to have telephone service in the UK, you had to go to BT, and there wasn't an alternative. And if you didn't like BT, you just didn't have telephone service. It was that simple. And my belief is that monopolies, former monopolies, make terrible customer service organizations because they're used to there being no alternative, and some of them tend to behave like that still. And my belief is BT culturally behaves very much like customers don't have another choice. And of course, we do. Now, EE comes from more of a highly competitive environment. In fact, one of the most competitive markets for mobile phones in history was in the UK between 5 and 10 years ago. And there were 4 players that were literally within a point or two of being the market leader. 4 at the same time. They were very, very equal. And 2 of those 4 players were Orange and T-Mobile. And they merged and they formed EE. Now, EE is used to having to fight for every customer, going above and beyond just to retain the customers they have. And I think that this kind of background, a highly competitive background, makes for a much more effective customer service culture. Now, I went through a move, and when I moved into my old flat, I tried to break from BT because I was not happy at all with the service. And I tried to go with a company called TalkTalk, and it went on and on and on for 6 months. And I was unable to get broadband that entire time. And BT was not able to resolve the problem. We had no idea why it couldn't be done. And I ended up having to go with BT because they were the only provider that could get service in there at the time. And my experience with BT is that they have this kind of attitude. No one does it better than we do, and we will continue to do it our way. Well, I would agree with part of that statement. I think the reliability of their network is certainly quite strong. And the strength of their signal is certainly incredibly strong. But their customer service leaves an awful lot to be desired. And I've had a number of different rounds with them where I've had to threaten to leave, and only then do I get a price break. But I always find myself paying in the top 25% for broadband, and I don't need to pay that much. Now, EE's philosophy is we need to change constantly to surpass our customers' expectations, and we will seek new ways of doing things so that we can do them better. And so when I went through this last move, before I started teaching business at St. Leonard's Academy, I decided that as BT has bought EE, I would see if EE offered broadband. And they do. And it's obviously off the backbone of BT, their parent company. But it's a whole different experience. And the rates immediately were markedly lower. So with BT, the starting price keeps going up until the customer threatens to leave. With EE, the most extraordinary thing happened. I had an issue unrelated to my broadband. I lost my mobile phone. And I couldn't find it anywhere. And ultimately, I gave up. And I went into the local EE shop, which I have for my mobile phone. And I got an upgrade, actually. They were kind enough to find me an upgrade instead of me having to pay a lot of money out of pocket, which I really, really appreciated. But they went a step beyond that. They said, who do you have for your broadband? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, it's you. And they said, fantastic. Well, didn't you know you're eligible for a volume discount? You've got your mobile phone with us, and now you've got your broadband, and we can knock a third off that. And I was just blown away that they would actually bring that up to me. That was so different from what I'd experienced with their very own parent company. I find that BT tells customers and EE asks customers. It's a very, very different approach. So with BT, for example, I needed some documentation on my expenses, and we had to get it in a certain format, and they wouldn't budge. With EE, it's totally different. If they can find a way to do it, they will. With BT, the poor reputation that they have is quite amazing because their actual service, the quality of the broadband is quite exceptional. With EE, though, they have a good reputation in spite of the fact that they've had some network instability. So their reputation is so good that it overcomes problems that they have had. So the real question here is, I've got two companies, well, one company now, two cultures. Which one of these is going to win out? Is it going to be BT, who is the boss? They are the parent company. Are they going to bludgeon the good service out of EE through their power? Just the fact that they're the boss. Or is someone at BT wise enough to realize that the company they've acquired runs circles around them for the quality of service, and that company needs to become the predominant service culture in this organization? If that happens, if service ultimately triumphs here, I think that will be close to a first in my book, and I will look forward to the improvements next time I deal with BT. The customer is always right. Have you heard that expression? Are they? Always? Well, my answer is, well, of course not. We're not. So why would they be? And I think this phrase is sometimes used to avoid having tough conversations with customers when we need to. I'm often asked, is it ever appropriate not to serve a customer? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. For example, I would not serve a racist after I've heard him espouse his hate, and I certainly hope you wouldn't. I would not serve a customer who intends to harm me or to harm other customers, and I certainly hope you wouldn't. I won't knowingly serve a customer who intends to harm himself or herself with what I'm selling them, and I certainly hope that you wouldn't. And as an addict myself, I cannot knowingly provide the substance that causes a relapse. I wish you a lifetime of innocence from the substances that would have addicted you, because there is nothing worse than feeling like you need some chemical or put something in your system to feel right. You feel really, really enslaved. So, is the customer always right? No, they are not always right. Good service does not pander or grovel. Good service takes courage. I want to give you an example of something that I think we lose sight of in this country a whole lot. I hear a lot of arguments in shops about tiny little things. And the Americans have an expression that I think fits best in this situation. They say, don't sweat the small stuff. And that's kind of like our expression, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. In other words, don't lose sight of the big picture of the value of that customer to you. And this brings up the topic of lifetime value. And this is relevant wherever you have a business that relies on repeat business. And there's no better example than that. I hate to keep using this as an example, but there's no better example than that than a convenience shop. Because some of those customers go in multiple times a day. So let me use this example. You own a convenience shop. You sell chomp bar for £1. Your competitor just started a 2-for-1. Your shop is full of customers. A regular customer who has a bad attitude, you're thinking, demands that you drop his price for his daily chomp bar to 50 pence because he figures, you know, the competition's got a 2-for-1. He wants a half price. You're embarrassed by his outburst because he does it in a full shop. Fully understandable. You refuse. He walks out. You never see him again. Did you make a good decision or a bad one? What do you think? Let's take a look. So let's look at the costs first of all. This customer asked you for a chomp bar. He buys a chomp bar each day. He's been paying £1. Now he wants to pay 50p. Now you pay 60p for each chomp bar. So if you sell it to him for 50p, you're making a loss. If you give in, you will lose £182.50 a year, assuming he buys one bar every day for the year, and you will also lose £36.50 in profit. Now that sounds like quite a bit of money. So he's not just asking you for 50 pence off. He's really asking you for something that could cost that much money in a year. But like many convenience shop customers, this customer is particularly reliant on your convenience shop. So let's look at the benefits he brings in. He every day buys a bottle of whiskey, a packet of cigarettes, and his evening meal. Before the chomp bar, he spends £30 every day at an above average margin of 20%. The cigarettes have a very poor margin. His evening meal and his bottle of whiskey will drive up the margin very nicely, so they balance it out. If you give in, you retain his business, which is worth £10,950 in revenue per year at a profit of £2,190. But you didn't want to give him the cost, and so you lost the customer. So pretty big loss, right? £2,190 in profit minus the £36, of course. So it's still over £2,100 that you've lost. But see, that's for this next year. That's not the lifetime value of this customer. This customer wanted that chomp bar deal for his 30th birthday. If you'd listened to him the other day, instead of just deciding that he's got a bad attitude and shutting your ears to what he's saying, you would have heard him say that. A heavy drinker and smoker, he's found dead in his bed on the morning of his 68th birthday. This is what your embarrassment just gave away to your competitor. So he's got 38 more years of life. And if you take those costs and those benefits and you multiply them by 38, this is what you get. It's going to cost you a lot of money in chomp bars. You're not going to make much money on chomp bars because that deal over the course of a lifetime would cost you £6,935 in revenue and £1,387 in profit. But what he buys in your shop over the course of a lifetime translates to almost £500,000, £416,100 in revenue at profit, pure profit, cash in your pocket of £83,202. So if you subtract out the costs, you end up with a net revenue of £409,165 and a net profit, real pound for pound cash, of £81,833. And you just sent all of that to the competition because you didn't like the guy. Now, I would absolutely love to be able to tell you that I knew all my life that likes and dislikes do not belong, do not have a place really in the workplace, because liking and disliking are the enemies of good judgment. And in order to illustrate that, I'm going to use my virtual background, actually, because in 1986, I went to work for a company called Teletech. And at the time, Teletech was, if you like, a one location kind of business. They were a pretty small business. I knew most of the people that worked there, and they were offering contact center services that were very, very effective services, certainly. But they were offering contact center services for various companies around the Los Angeles area. And when I went to work for them, I was made the manager of outbound sales. And so my job was to manage outbound sales campaigns, calling into businesses or calling into consumers and trying to sell particular products. Well, you can certainly tell behind me, that's a picture of them opening the NASDAQ stock exchange. And you can certainly tell from what you can see going on that they are certainly much bigger today. In fact, they are the world's largest provider of outsourced contact center services. So I might have made the wrong choice by deciding to leave. But we had a particularly interesting account opportunity while I was there. And I'm going to show you some of the logos of the companies involved so that you can see what I'm talking about. Virtual background's pretty neat, isn't it? So we started to do some work for the company that's down on this side right here, this logo right here. This belongs to a little tiny business called Medimail. And Medimail planned to use its unique location in Las Vegas to offer prescription drugs through the mail to customers. Now, this is fairly commonplace today, but it was quite revolutionary back then. And they had landed an exclusive contract with a company called MedNet, which is the that particular logo that you see up there. So MedNet was the prescription drug card for the AFL-CIO, which is that logo behind me right there. The AFL-CIO is the Trade Union Congress of the United States. It is a massive organization. And so little Medimail, located in Las Vegas, had gained the rights to solicit every single retired union person in the United States. It was a huge contract opportunity, not just for Medimail, but for Teletech as well. And in the United States, I should explain that no one gets medical coverage by right of birth. It is something that you have to pay for. You either pay for medical insurance, or if you don't have medical insurance, you're supposed to pay the actual medical bill. And as people get older, they tend to accumulate more medications. And so an elderly person in the United States could be paying tens of thousands a year, literally, just for their medications to keep them alive. And it's a very, very serious situation. So we were actually providing a really good service because we were calling in, and if we could convince customers that this made sense for them, we could switch them onto what are called generics. And generics are mostly what the NHS frankly gives to us. Generics are the equivalent, the same thing chemically, but they just don't have the brand name to them. And you can save customers thousands upon thousands of pounds a year in the United States by convincing them to switch. And I was fortunate enough to find a really brilliant supervisor to be dedicated to this program. Her name is Jane. She was absolutely wonderful. She was about 5 years older than me. And frankly, I should have been reporting to her. She was really capable at everything that she did. And she did a first-rate job on this account. And it was only, I think, purely sexism, the sexism that existed in the 80s in Los Angeles that caused her not to be my boss, frankly. But I was very, very privileged to have her working with me. And we gave it every effort. And we had a pilot, and we tried everything we could think of, but we had a problem. We were calling into the homes of senior citizens who tended to be a little bit more suspicious anyway of people calling them out of the blue. And we wanted to know about some really confidential information. We wanted to know about their medications, and then we wanted to try to persuade them to take something that sounded very different that was much cheaper. And we had a trust issue, frankly. And in the entire pilot, we did not make one sale. It was a complete disaster. And we were very, very deflated because we had this incredible opportunity. And there was an entrepreneur that owned this MediMail company. And it just looked like nothing was going to happen. And so we got together in a crisis. Jane and I, we met in the conference room. And I forget who said what. It doesn't really matter because we were a good team. And we came up with the idea that we would split this into 2 calls. The first call would be from a representative who would say, look, if you are willing to have our pharmaceutical specialists take a look at your prescriptions, if you're willing to have your doctor release them to us, we're able to make these savings. But I'm not able to do it. I need to turn it over to a pharmaceutical specialist. And then a higher level, a more skilled associate would then place the follow-up call. And by splitting the calls like that, we took care of the trust issue. And the sales just started rolling in. They were just absolutely pouring in. And not only that, but it was the kind of work that felt really, really good to do. Because you see, we were having senior citizens burst into tears when they realized that they'd just saved $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. I mean, these were extreme savings for these folks. And many of them were struggling to pay for their medications. So it felt really, really good when you're doing well and you're doing good. Nothing, frankly, feels better. And we were just really privileged to have this opportunity. And Jane was in constant contact with the owner of MediMail, who was hearing about it, getting quite excited. And it was time for him to come to Los Angeles and have a negotiation with us about the ongoing future of his business being held at Teletech and how we were going to expand this. Now, Jane had warned me that this individual, this entrepreneur from Las Vegas, was a bit different, shall we say. But I don't think I was ready for exactly how different he was going to be. You see, he'd owned tons of small businesses all over Las Vegas. And because of the kind of city that Las Vegas is, some of those businesses were interesting. In fact, you're too young for me to tell you about what some of them were. So that'll give you an idea of how interesting they were. And so I'd not been exposed to that kind of thing. And I thought it was a bit sleazy, and I made some value judgments about him that I really shouldn't have made. And when we met, he obviously looked across the table and saw that he was going to be negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract with a 25-year-old with no negotiating experience whatsoever. And frankly, he pinned me to the proverbial mat of negotiating. He exposed me as not being fit for purpose when it came to negotiating with him. And it was an absolutely awful experience. I got very embarrassed. I got angry. I lost my temper, which you don't just totally lose your temper in business. It's just not. It shows a lack of control. And my dislike for him, I think dislike is too mild a word. It was bordering on hatred, to be honest with you. And it just blinded me to seeing any way through the negotiation. And I found out later that I played right into his hands. He had no intention of giving Teletech that contract. We'd done our part. We'd proved how he could make money at it, and he was going to take it back. But you see, he needed someone to run that business, and he found her. He found Jane. And I regret obviously losing the deal, and particularly the way I behaved. But what was most painful was losing Jane and knowing that she was going. She made a fabulous success of that business. Continued there many years, and I found out in researching this, actually, to tell you about it, that Medimail was ultimately acquired by Mednet. And I'm sure this gentleman who had the interesting businesses, I'm sure he retired very, very comfortably indeed. But I learned in a very, very painful way that my likes and dislikes are irrelevant to a business transaction, frankly. I mean, if I had grounds to question his, his ethics or something like that, that might have been very different. But I didn't. It was nothing like that. I just had really a profound personal dislike for him just in one meeting. And if I hadn't adopted that attitude, we might have been able to find a way that we could have continued to work together. So again, just an extremely painful experience, at least from my point of view, and one that I just really, really don't want to go through again. But I can say definitively that liking and disliking in business are absolutely, in my view, the total enemies of good judgment. And they should be avoided at all costs. Leave them out. It isn't about like or dislike. It's about a good transaction and a poor transaction and nothing else. So I think at this point, I want to introduce something really strange to you, but it feels that it's appropriate at this time. I'm going to tell you about a prayer that I think is very, very informative when it comes to how you should behave in business. And this prayer, and you don't have to view it as a prayer at all if you don't want to. It's not, I'm not trying to introduce you to prayer. I'm trying to introduce you to a very interesting business concept that this particular prayer brings up. This is called the Serenity Prayer, and it's by a gentleman by the name of Reinhold Niebuhr. And that, I'm actually just right over his picture, aren't I? That is him right there. So it goes like this. There are three parts to it, and this is just the very, very first part of a very long prayer. So, but we're just going to look at these three parts. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So how does this relate to business, and particularly that experience that I had in Los Angeles? Well, the things I can't change aren't things. the things that it took me until 49 years of age to understand that I couldn't change are people. I cannot change other people. I can't make you want to study. I can't make you go to class now. It's entirely up to you whether you choose to learn or not. I have no ability to change you. I could inspire you and you could decide to change, but that's not me changing you. That is us taking responsibility to change ourselves. And that's where the second part comes in. The courage to change the things I can. Well, what can I change? I can change me. You can change you. I do need to let you know, and I'm never believed that I would feel this way, but I do now. It gets harder to change. I think that's because we get stuck in the same pattern and we lose sight. There are better ways of doing things. When you're younger, you're less likely to be in a rigid pattern and you're more flexible and you are more open to change. At least that's my experience. When we went into the lockdown situation, for example, I really didn't like it at all. And I was quite bewildered because I'd been focused so much on the year 11 exam situation that I completely missed what was going on in the world around us. So I was pretty bewildered for the first couple of days as to what on earth was going on. And then I realized that I needed to learn some new ways of doing things. I needed to learn some tools like these. I needed to learn a new way of teaching online, remotely, virtual, which is very difficult because I don't see anybody. I have to rely on your feedback. I have to rely on tools to tell me whether you're there or not. And it's difficult, but it can be done. I proved that to myself. I'm no expert at this, but I'm trying very hard. And hopefully you see with every lesson, it gets a little bit better. I certainly hope that's the case. And if it's not the case, you do need to tell me. But you see, there's also, so we can't change others. We can change ourselves. But then there's this huge gray area of whether we need to change or whether someone else needs to change. And frankly, if someone else needs to change, then that's their business, it's not mine. And I need to focus on what I need to do to get better at what I'm doing and let them focus on what they need to do to get better at what they're doing. But when you can't work out which is which, you need a source of wisdom. And so my question to you is, what is your source of wisdom to figure out what you can change and what you can't? And I mention this because just about every business leader that I've known has some form of source of wisdom. Now, it's different. In order to maximize their success, you see, business leaders must have a good understanding of what they can and cannot change. This invariably involves finding this source from somewhere. And this source could be a higher power, something greater than themselves. Maybe they believe in God, a faith or a belief system, a philosophy, an education, a spouse with whom they can partner, a teacher, a mentor, a trusted advisor, even a potential or an existing customer. There have been business people who have had the most tremendous revelation of what they can change because they talked with one of their customers. I was very moved. I don't know if it's age appropriate. I think it is. But there is a film that came out last year or the year before called The Darkest Hour. And it's about Winston Churchill in the very first part of World War II. And he was, frankly, just about to sign the Articles of Surrender to the Nazis. He was very, very close. And his source of wisdom was quite moving. You see, he was from a very wealthy background and he'd never been on the Underground in London. And that's where he went. And he spoke to the passengers on a particular Underground train. And they told him not to surrender. And he didn't. And we're here largely because of that. So what will your source of wisdom be? Now, in your business of the future, which I consider to be your education, in that particular business, who is your customer? Well, I think I'm looking at you. I think it's you. And that makes it a very interesting business model. Because not only are you the boss of the business of your education, but you're also the primary beneficiary. So there is nothing that you can't change. All right, just in a brief review for you, we all have customers, and we should always remember who they are. We must be open to feedback and value our customers' time. No more lessons, Mr. Hobden, over an hour. We need to understand that our customers' perception is their reality, and their reality is our reality. When we're in conflict, we should seek to serve our customers' needs over pleasing their wants. Our customers who promote our business put their reputation on the line for ours. We should go out of our way to retain them. One dissatisfied customer in the wrong place at the wrong time can damage or even destroy our business. We should do everything we can to resolve their dissatisfaction. Good service is courageous, and there are people we shouldn't serve. Look to lifetime value and don't sweat the small stuff. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Our personal likes and dislikes can damage our judgment. Know what we can and cannot change, and cultivate a source of wisdom to enable us to tell the difference. And above all, have the courage to change. Okay, so please take a look, if you would, at I Achieve Unit 1, Session 5, and evidence your learning in one of the following ways. And I've given 3 options this time based on your responses. And here they are. First of all, for those targeting a level 2 pass, or if you particularly like the worksheets and get value from them, please complete worksheets 36 to 38. For those targeting a level 2 merit, pick one of the short answer essays per worksheet from the 3 extension choices provided. So I provided 3 choices per worksheet, pick one of them, and that satisfies your need to do the worksheet. You don't have to do the worksheet as well if you don't want to. If you want to do both, I will certainly mark both, and I will give you feedback on both. I've started marking the short answer essays now as if they are exam questions. And so I will give the response back to you in the form of an exam question and some suggestions for you as to how I believe you could have got maximum points. And lastly, for those targeting a distinction or a distinction star, please write a long answer essay comparing the concepts in I Achieve Unit 1, Session 5, and the impact that COVID-19 has had on them. So assess the impact of COVID-19 on customer service. we are now in the home stretch. This coming week, we will finish up session 5, which is customer service, just 3 worksheets. And then we move on to 2 very short sessions. Session 6 is about the internal influences that impact a business. What inside a business causes issues for that business. And then we finish up, ironically, with session 7, which is about external influences. And we have just had what is quite possibly the most impactful external influence on business in history. So that should be pretty easy for us to understand what happens when things like this happen to businesses. On the week of July the 13th, I'm going to be asking you to complete Unit 1 activity, which is very much like an abbreviated version of a mock. I'm going to allow you to do it open book, so you can look up the answers as you go along. I'd much rather you find the information than be marked on whether you can memorize it or not at this point. But do keep in mind, we do have 2 mocks coming up next year in October and in January. And then the one last thing I'm going to ask you to do for me for the year is to please fill out my mandatory qualitative survey. This will be the follow-up. I'm taking questions from you as to questions you'd like to ask the entire cohort, and I will be studying those answers over the summer break and taking them very much to heart. And hopefully you've seen some changes in the production standards of the lessons, hopefully the timing of the lessons, the content of the lessons, no more I achieve talking heads. And that comes very, very much from the feedback that you've given me. So I do value that feedback. I know it's probably a little unusual to have a teacher solicit as much feedback as I solicit, but that comes from my business training, because that's what I want you to do. If you go into business, I want you to be listening to your customers every step of the way. You are my customers. I appreciate every one of you. Stay safe. And until we meet again, I'll have the next lesson prepared for you. Take care now.